Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. UK stocks have suffered their biggest daily fall since the start of the COVID pandemic in response to Donald Trump's global trade tariffs. It came as China applied its own retaliatory tariffs to American imports, stoking fears of an international trade war. Russell Brand has been charged with rape, sexual assault and indecent assault by the Metropolitan Police. He says he's innocent. New documents released as part of a Home Office case into an alleged Chinese spy have revealed the King had meetings with Prince Andrew about funding his future outside of royal duties. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages of the newspapers as they come into us. It's time to see what's making the headlines with PR consultant Alex Deane and Guardian columnist Zoe Williams. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the Eye leads on the impact of Donald Trump's tariffs on the markets today. Its headline, Crisis Talks to Safeguard the UK amid fears of a global recession. The Financial Times features a picture of the US president with his fist in the air as he remains defiant in the face of an intensifying trade war and plunging stocks. The Times focuses on China's announcement of retaliatory tariffs, a 34% levy on all US goods, after the country accused Trump of unilateral bullying. The Mirror reports on the allegations of rape and sexual assault made against the comedian Russell Brand, which he denies. The Sun also leads on that story. The Mail carries claims that the King has been drawn into the Chinese spy scandal involving Prince Andrew, as does the Telegraph. The King caught in Andrew spy row is the headline there. The Daily Express leads on the King and Queen state visit to Italy on Monday, saying the King is healthy and raring to go. And the Star is drumming up excitement ahead of the hot weather expected this weekend. 22 degrees as the races take place. They're anticipating sizzling barbecues, parties and a tanned national. Lots to look forward to there. And we're joined tonight by Alex Deane and Zoe Williams to take us through the newspapers. Welcome to you both. Well, let's start with the continuing story, lead story of the fallout from Donald Trump's tariffs. We'll start with the Eye. Headline there, Crisis Talks to Safeguard UK amid fears of global recession. And this is pointing to the talks that Sir Keir Starmer will be having with leaders this weekend. Alex?
Yeah, he's speaking initially to the Prime Ministers of Italy and Australia, and will speak to others as the week unfolds. Look, countries faced with tariffs like this can capitulate, negotiate, or retaliate. And we're seeing how people are planning to respond in real time. The newspapers are carrying the news of China's retaliatory tariffs in place. Singapore has said it's going to capitulate and then seek to negotiate. So not take retaliatory tariffs, but seek to explain to the Americans that they don't deserve the tariffs that they've got. The United Kingdom's position is different. We've said we're going to have a 30-day consultation period, so businesses, those affected by tariffs, can get in touch with government and make clear what this would mean to them, including, of course, the fact that their businesses might export to the EU, and that finished product might then go on to the US under a higher tariff rate, which would matter for them as well, and then the government will form a view thereafter. One of the troubles for them is that lots of economic logic might be to maintain a unilateral low tariff position, not respond, protect our consumers by not forcing up prices, which is what tariffs do. They're inflationary and they push prices up. But the political imperative to be seen to be responding to Trump and to be seen to be taking action to defend British industries, which I think is false, by the way, but there'll be a lot of pressure to do that, will be very strong.
Zoe, do you think that the UK will retaliate after this consultation period with business?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because essentially, the only people who want the UK to take joint action with the EU are the Lib Dems. Both the Conservatives are cock-a-hoop because they're like, this is finally a Brexit benefit, that we haven't been rolled into the same tariffs as the EU. We have our own, and they are significantly lower. The Labour Party, Keir Starmer's entire shtick for the whole time he's been Prime Minister has been, I am a cool head and I don't make any sudden moves. And that finally seems to be a meaningful line in this situation. He's decided not to make any sudden moves, so he's not going to. And you know, as I say, it's quite a rare voice in the territory saying we should be on the same page as our European allies. Because even if we're not in the same tariff regimen as them, which we're not, you have to pick some allies. You can't. You have to pick a side in the end. If you say, "Oh, hallelujah, we've got lower tariffs than everybody else. Let's just make the most of it," it's quite an important failure of solidarity and comradeship, which will bite us should we ever fall foul of Donald Trump, which I guarantee we will. You know, he's quixotic.
Alex, is this the time to show solidarity with the EU?
Look, it's not about whether the UK is with the EU or not. It's the rest of the world having to respond to the US rolling out tariffs everywhere. Our trading partners all over the world are going to suffer as a result of this. And I don't think anyone's cock-a-hoop about us, inverted commas, only having 10% tariffs with the United States. That's bad. Right? Any businessman or woman watching tonight thinking about losing 10% of their profit would think to themselves, hang on a minute, or their turnover might think to themselves, my God, this is absolutely terrible.
Although Donald Trump is saying that Sir Keir Starmer's very happy with the 10%.
Well, I don't think any political leader is going to be happy about having tariffs imposed by their most important trading and political ally. So that's for the birds. But moreover, in an interconnected economy, tariffs anywhere hurt people everywhere. We trade not just with the European Union, we trade with China and India and countries all across Africa and South America. And those countries are going to, those countries' economies are going to have negative impact, which will affect us too and affect our consumers.
Oh, yeah, quite. I mean, nobody was saying tariffs were a good thing, but there are certainly members of...
Apart from Donald Trump.
There are certainly people on the, you know, on the pro-Brexit side in the British political landscape saying, look, finally we've got a Brexit benefit, which I think is misguided. I don't think anybody should be celebrating anything.
Let's talk about China, because they're one of the countries retaliating, hitting with reciprocal tariffs of 34%. Although I know, Alex, you don't think there's any such thing as a reciprocal tariff, but they're accusing the United States of unilateral bullying.
Which is, I mean, is a pretty reasonable position to take, given that the Americans have imposed this on the maths being used by our friends in America to come up with the number is so ferociously arbitrary. So they've said, what's the trade deficit we have with a country? Half that, and that's going to be the number of additional tariffs. Now, I accept that not just Trump, but White House for many years now have had an issue with the way that China behaves in economic terms. They don't respect patents, they rip off products, they don't follow international law norms, they prop up businesses with state ownership and seek to circumvent the rules on that state activity. They may or may not conduct industrial espionage. You know, there are all sorts of legitimate complaints you can have. But to impose arbitrary tariffs like this, to me, seems a very foolish way to go about things. And remember, the 34 points that he's put on China is on top of the 20 that was already there. Now, China responds with a 34 percentage point tariff to the Americans. But many businesses in the United States were already paying a tariff to trade into China. So, for example, I know their agricultural sector is much more important to their economy than ours, not being dismissive of our farmers, it's just a larger part of their economy. They were either paying 10 or 15% already, depending on what kind of farmer they were. Well, 15% on top of 54, it's basically you're not going to be trading. And that they can go somewhere else for chicken or sorghum or whatever it is that the Americans were selling to them. It's a world market. These are not products that you're going to find hard to source somewhere else. Whereas, for example, the Chinese activity in rare earth minerals might prove rather more difficult to replace.
I mean, Donald Trump saying that, just to quote Trump here, Zoe, that they played it wrong, they panicked, the one thing they cannot afford to do, and he's saying this is a great time to get rich, richer than ever before. So
the language around the Chinese is incredibly bellicose. I didn't actually catch whether it was Vance or somebody else, but they were explaining the high tariffs on China as we've been borrowing from Chinese peasants to buy the goods that they make. That isn't the way to make anybody rich. And it was really extraordinary. It was quite it was quite violent language, actually, and I think they're crossing a road to pick a fight.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because whilst I wouldn't speak in the way this administration does about a lot of things, on this one, Trump's been way out in front in his criticism of China, quite famously in the campaigning that he did before the White House and in between his terms in the White House. But, of course, President Obama instituted tariffs against China to seek to protect American industry prior to that, a position that Democrats widely supported. So some of this is very plainly just for the domestic audience in the United States. I'm not saying that's not important. That's the prime motivator for most politicians. But, you know, he has always believed in protective tariffs as a useful way of advancing an economic situation for his country, which I just think is completely wrong and debunked by most economists in the world today.
I think as well, though, that there's a kind of underlying sense that that the trade war is just an overture in a new era of aggression, of kind of overt aggression.
So
is, you know, that is something to think about. Whether they follow it up, I don't know.
Well, in the FT, just to bring in another front page quickly, the Peterson Institute of International Economics is calculating that the average American tariffs on Chinese goods would rise to 76%, well above the 60% Trump threatened in last year's election campaign.
Because so many of them have got tariffs on them already.
Yeah. We'll leave that tariffs for the moment and take a break. Thank you. A royal bombshell. The court papers revealing how the king's been drawn into a China spy storm. More on that when we come back.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. No freedom! Sky News, the full story first. There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. Free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in. Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous. We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
The Premier League run-in is live on NBC and Peacock as City Pride is on the line with a pair of iconic derbies.
It doesn't get any better.
Thursday, it's a London derby. Chelsea.
Beautiful goal from Chelsea.
Spurs.
What a game!
Then Sunday,
Brace yourself, Manchester, for the mother of all derbies.
United.
Hear the place!
City. The Premier League run-in is live on NBC and streaming on Peacock.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered, from the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back to the press preview. Still with me, Alex and Zoe. And by popular demand, although I said otherwise before the break, we're going to continue talking about tariffs. Just a couple more points, really just springing off the fact that global stock markets plunged for a second consecutive day as investments reacted to the trade war, the international trade war sparked by Donald Trump's tariffs.
And some people will think, what do I care? I don't play the stock market. But if you've got a pension, then your pension is invested in the very self-same stocks and shares that have taken a bath because of the manoeuvring undertaken by the White House. These last 2 days have wiped out circa 11 months of gains. Now, you can pick out individual stocks and shares that have fared differently, but the overall picture looks like that. About a year's worth of success taken off in 2 days. That is not good. But the second point I wanted to make was Zoe was asking before the break, does this get worse than just trade and tariff issues? And you don't have to get all the way to that to think about how this can become worse economically, because if they're serious, the real question now is, are they serious about negotiating, about what we can do to get rid of some of the tariffs they've imposed? And if they are serious about having that discussion, then we'll have conversations that lots of people in this country won't like. Chlorine-washed chicken, hormone-injected beef, access to the NHS, things that stymied trade deals last time, but you can at least have that conversation. The worst scenario is they're really not that serious about having a debate. They see tariffs as the way of life for the future. And if that's the position the Americans take, and people gather that, I mean, to get down to 7.5%, they expect us to completely overhaul VAT, for example, which is one of the things they were objecting to. Then we wind up much closer to seeing lots of countries around the world taking retaliatory action and tariffs becoming the new norm.
But actually, what we were talking about was trade war becoming hot war, and whether or not these measures, these tariff measures, legitimising a way of talking about geopolitics and other countries that is inherently, aggressive.
Look,
and a way potentially of negotiating. I mean, we're hearing unverified reports from other media outlets that President Trump is actually negotiating now, right this minute, with Vietnam, India and Israel. So was it just a jump-off point to start negotiations, and the tariffs will never come to pass?
Well, that may be the case, and of course that's the kind of trick he played with Canada and Mexico before, where respectively on migration and fentanyl, he said, I'm going to impose these things unless you change your stance, and they both did. The difference, I mean, the situation in China is generational. It's not something you can flip all of a sudden. I see the point on Vietnam and co, one of the world's fastest growing economies, a huge population. You'd want to do a deal and you'd want to have low tariff arrangements. But what's he going to do with somewhere like Singapore, which doesn't have any tariffs on the US to start with? I mean, they don't have anything to give. So they're expecting you to realise that what you've done in the first place was a mistake. And that's one thing I think this White House is very bad at, right, saying we got it wrong.
The other thing...
Last point.
Well, the other thing is that it is actually quite a useful way for Trump to keep his own business and corporate sector obedient to him, because it gives you a huge amount of power over your own industries if you can, at your own discretion, have tariffs on one thing and no tariffs on another, negotiate with one area and not with another. It just gives you the kind of power which presidents, indeed no democratically held office, typically has.
OK, just got time to look at this story concerning Prince Andrew and the King, covered by the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph. And this is the King being drawn into the China spy storm. Allegedly had meetings with Prince Andrew about his future funding as he stepped away from being a working royal, Alex.
After Prince Andrew's disastrous interview with Emily Maitlis, he came off royal duties. And when that happens, you come off the royal allowances. And so it was natural that the King was going to have a conversation with him to say, well, what are you going to do now? I think that's what most brothers might say when their brother took an enormous hit on income. But what's been revealed by Prince Andrew's so-called fixer, Dominic Hampshire, is that in the course of those conversations, which were basically illicit, they were smuggled into Windsor Castle to have them with the King, the specific subject of the fund in which Yang Tengbo was involved, the person alleged to be involved in espionage with China, who's been banned from the United Kingdom, that was one of the things Prince Andrew said he would do in order to ensure that he still had an income.
And the story is that the king knew about that.
Well, if your brother tells you, by definition, you know of it. And that's what Hampshire's recollection in his evidence says.
Zoe?
I mean, you know that I'm not as much of a royalist as Alex is, but I'm kind of inclined. It wouldn't have been. I don't want to defend the king, right?
Why?
But it wouldn't have been the time to say, you've effectively been stripped of royal duties, but I'm also going to block you from making money any other way. So if it happens that there was a brief grey area in which Andrew floated an idea that was actually really unwise, I still wouldn't be inclined to blame Charles for it. I would still be more likely to blame Andrew for it.
You'd hope there'd be some sort of apparatus that said, we should do some due diligence before you get involved with them. Because what you do doesn't just reflect on you, it reflects on all of us.
But listen, if you'd done due diligence before Andrew had got involved with things, that would have started quite a long time ago, right?
Yeah, OK.
I mean...
Epstein and co.
He seems to make his own choices.
Indeed. Zoe and Alex, thank you very much for the moment. Let us take a look at the weather for you now.